recording as well. Next up, Ricardo.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Ricardo Reina. I'm the owner of a company called Reina Rebuild. We manufacture and sell automotive rebuild engines, and just recently opened our own automotive shop. And so we also do general auto repairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. We'll go ahead and hear from Jimmy.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jimmy Rios. I am the owner of Next Level Business Concepts Group and Next Level Credit Plus. We are a small business incubator here in Mesa and Chandler, East Valley, but we service the whole valley and help individuals with all their business needs and helping them get started and get to the next level.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. We'll go ahead and move on with Imelda.
Terminate.
Hi, Imelda, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Imelda Harley. I'm the founder of Imelda's Happy Tamales, and also I edit another company, which is Harley Studios AC. I'm truly excited to be here this morning, learning and just empowering myself and to try my business. Thank you.
Thank you, Imelda. We'll go ahead and hear from Everardo.
Hi, good morning. My name is Everardo Kimi. I own Photo Fusion Studio in downtown Phoenix. I'm a commercial photographer. Thank you very much for putting on these classes. It's been very helpful to catch up and then help me direct my staff a little bit too as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Everardo. We'll go ahead and go with Brenda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Mamandi. I am the owner of XN Solutions. We are a performance marketing group. Essentially, what that means is that we help small to medium-sized businesses with their marketing strategy and their paid advertising through channels like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Google, you name it. We'll be there. We'll help you out. Such a pleasure to have an opportunity to sit and learn from you guys. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know Linda's connected, but she did send a note here that she's the owner and stylist of Linda Valenzuela Salon, and that she's in the meeting, but she won't be able to talk for the first 20 minutes. So thank you, Linda. We'll hear from Carlos Rosales. Carlos, you might be on mute. Okay, so we'll go ahead and skip Carlos for now. Henry. You're on mute, or... Okay, we'll go ahead and skip Henry. He looks like he's having some mic issues here. We'll go ahead and move on with Yasmin. Yasmin, can you hear us? Okay, looks like some of you are having mic issues or connection issues. Totally understand. It is raining today, so it's a very strange morning for everyone. So no worries there. Mabel, can you introduce yourself really quick?
Yes, thank you. Mabel Sosi. My business is Spotted Horse Info Systems, LLC. We do computer services work, and I am very thankful for all the support you've all given. Thank you.
Thank you, Mabel. Luis Castro says that he's also having internet connection issues. So I think with that, I think that's everyone who's here in our class today. But again, thank you all so much for attending. This is our 5th class. We're super excited. We're almost to the finish line in January. January 20th is the date. We're still working on what time because it is your graduation as well from the program. And I also need to mention that it is inauguration day of the president. So we're working on figuring out, the best time to do that. So we'll send you more details, hopefully in the next couple days or so. We are expecting the president of the United States Hispanic Chamber to come in as well and provide some remarks. So we're really excited for everyone to get to the finish line. And we thank all of our speakers. We want to thank Megan for joining us and presenting our class number 5 on negotiation. So with that, I will go ahead and wrap up here. I'll let Megan start her presentation. Around 10 o'clock or so, we'll have our little 5-minute break. So Megan will kind of wrap up the first portion, and then, we'll have our 5-minute break and then continue on with our second half. So Megan, thank you so much. You can take it from here.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for sitting through a negotiations training with a lawyer. I know we're not the first person you want to talk to at 9 o'clock in the morning, so I appreciate you all sitting here and listening. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself so you knew my background. My name is Megan Porth. I was born and raised in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, so I've been in Arizona my whole life. I really, really love it here. I also am an attorney. I'm a second career attorney. So before I went to law school, I was actually a lobbyist and I was a software salesperson. So I've been in the entrepreneur world for quite some time. And in fact, in my family, you go to work. You don't go to school necessarily. You start a business. So that was the world I wanted to continue being in. This is the area I love. This is all of the work I love doing. So that is how I founded Your Contract Shop. Because when I started practicing law, I realized that the fees for attorneys were ridiculously high. It was really hard to get in with a lawyer. You couldn't just hire them just for a contract. You had to have a retainer agreement, which you actually have to have, but you'd have to have a retainer fee. You'd have to sit down and have long, arduous conversations with the lawyer. You'd have to drive downtown and park. So we've eliminated all of that with my law firm. We are virtual, we are web-based. We have actual contractors working with us. So all of the attorneys and paralegals who work on projects are contractors. Even my receptionists are virtual contractor receptionists. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to keep the overhead of the firm as low as possible so that I could make legal services more accessible to more businesses out there. So that's our focus. Of course, I'll talk about a little bit more about the firm at the end, but I wanted you all to know how what the evolution looked like, because really my negotiation story started long before I ever became an attorney. It started with me having an entrepreneur father who, when I wanted to date a specific boy, I had to actually put together a PowerPoint presentation, negotiate the terms, and sign a contract. I kid you not, that is what my father made me do. What it taught me at the time was that negotiations are in every aspect of our life. So this is why I have such a passion around negotiations. I was really touching on what Imelda said about empowerment and how these classes are empowering. And that's exactly what I would love to give all of you. The power of negotiations, feeling confident and comfortable in this situation, really is empowering for you as a business owner. And let's be honest, our entire economy is built on an innumerable number of contracts that we are engaging in on a daily basis, whether it's your cell phone or even when you're negotiating. Even my agreement to come and be on this presentation, there was some back and forth between Elizabeth and I. What was the time? How long can I go? What questions can I ask? What's the format? That's merely negotiations. We call it communication and collaboration, but that's how I want you to change your mindset around negotiations. So we're actually going to do some paradigm shifts today. We're going to have some polling questions because I want to keep everybody awake for the whole 90 minutes. I will also finish with some resources that I think are really, really valuable, and we'll have a Q&A at the end so you can ask me some questions. Now, to get a little bit of the, I guess, the legal disclaimers out of the way, I have to say this, but I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is legal information. If you would like to schedule a call with me, I'll give you some information at the end of the session so that you all know that you can call me. I want you to know that we do free initial consults. That's 30 minutes on the phone. We can talk about your business. I also am offering everyone on this call a free 5-page contract review. And I do this quite often, and it's really a great way to kind of dip your toes into having an attorney review a contract for you that you're like, I don't know. I mean, it could go this way, it could go that way. I don't know if it's worth it to have a lawyer review it for me. So we'll talk about that at the end as well. I'll recap that. But we can definitely talk through some of these issues, especially on a one-on-one basis. So if you ask questions or you send any questions through the chat, please do me a favor, don't send anything confidential through the chat. We want to make sure we preserve that privilege that you have when you're talking to a lawyer. So let's get started on some of this fun stuff. We're going to start with actually starting. So when we talk about negotiations, believe it or not, the beginning is the most important. And we kind of already talked about how often we negotiate, even when you're talking with your about where to eat or who's doing the dishes tonight, or whenever you've asked. Now, granted, most of you are entrepreneurs, so I'm not sure if you're asking your boss for a raise, but really our bosses as business owners are all of our clients. So if you've ever had to negotiate an increase in fees or even a reduction in overhead or a reduction in the timeline, you have been negotiating. It doesn't look the way we thought it looked, right? And this is one of my favorite things that I've learned throughout all of the negotiation training that I've done, is that it's a much more collaborative approach. We are not sitting, this is how everybody pictures negotiations. Hard-nosed negotiations are two people sitting across each other at a board table, and they're just yelling numbers at each other. But the truth is, and I can tell you this, negotiating hundreds of contracts and contract disputes, is we actually start from a place of collaboration. And even attorneys do this. Everyone, again, pictures lawyers in an adversarial position, which we are in, but yelling at each other. But I can tell you, in the beginning, we do a lot of prep work, and we actually do a lot of relationship building. So again, this was one of the reasons why I felt like the whole world has to know this, so that negotiations aren't so intimidating. It's really working with other human beings, preserving those relationships, making sure that the parties get what they need, each of them. So the objectives for today, we want to talk about the types of negotiations. We want to understand the basic types, the phases of those negotiations, and the skills that you need to be successful. I want you to also understand some of the terms that you'll hear used quite frequently in negotiation training. I'm going to reference some of these terms from a book that I love called Getting to Yes. And you'll talk about BATNA and WATNA and ZOPA and WAP. We're going to lay the groundwork for some of those negotiations and identify what information you share, because that's really important. What do we hold close to the vest? What do we give up? We want to understand some of the bargaining techniques. We want to understand mutual gain. And that's what we were kind of talking about before, about this collaborative approach to this technique. We're gonna, what does the other party actually need? Because that's really what we're trying to figure out in the end. We already know what we need, and so we need to figure out what the other party needs. So it's going to take a lot of listening, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to listen actively. Then in module 2, and don't worry about the modules, we're just kind of working through all of this. It helps to kind of break it down. What we first have to do is we have to understand what negotiations actually are. So there are 2 basic types of negotiations, and then there are 3 phases within each of those negotiations, and we're going to talk about the skills that you need within each of those phases and what works best for you as a negotiator. Now, as I walk through this, I want you all to know that each of us has our own negotiation style. It's what we feel most comfortable with. Some of these concepts are universal. For instance, preparation. I don't care what your negotiation style is, preparation is absolutely key. However, you may find that you're in more of an integrative style, which is you have multiple issues and you're building bridges, or you have distributive, where it's very exacting, it's confidential, you focus on the information. You also may find that you like to set kind of the mood in the beginning of the negotiation, which you really should. Regardless of your style, we're going to set the mood. We're going to tell the other party where our stance is. And depending on what you're negotiating, that actually may change even for within your own negotiation style. In certain instances, you may have to be very, very firm, and all of your language and your tone and even the environment that you've chosen to negotiate the deal needs to reflect that tone. You may also choose that we're going to have a more collaborative effort. So those are the times when, for instance, I bring donuts. I know that sounds silly, but it tells everybody I'm here. We're going to have fun. We're going to enjoy ourselves. Have a little bit of sugar because we're going to be here for a while. So we have the, oh yeah.
Apologies. Can you share your screen so that way we could see?
I'm so sorry, guys. Hold on.
No worries.
I didn't realize y'all weren't seeing my screen. There were brilliant things up here. I'm so sorry.
And we'll also share the slides, you know, after the event as well. But
one moment. Let me go ahead and
Thank
see.
you.
Of course. I apologize. Okay, are we there?
Doesn't look like it quite yet.
Okay. It says I'm sharing my screen.
No,
Do I have to get somebody?
I have the slides up here, so I could go through them.
Okay, yeah, it's saying one participant can share at a time. So I'm not sure if it's.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that here.
Does that work? And you'll just, are you?
I think we're here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and then are you controlling this,
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay, not a problem, not a problem. Let me just get back to here. 1 second. Okay. So we have, I'm sorry, it's actually showing me a different screen on mine. So 1 second. Oh, is it running through? Are you running through that?
Yes, it's my screen.
Okay, okay, okay. Wonderful, wonderful. Give me just a second so I can catch up to that one, okay?
Okay.
Give me just a second. Okay, okay. Awesome. I think we're there. I think we're there. Okay, so we have two different types of negotiations. We have the integrative, which of course includes multiple issues, and bridge building. So when we look at bridge building, all we're saying is we're trying to create a relationship here. So when we're creating a relationship, what we have to do is we always have to make sure that we are doing that collaborative space. That's where I was talking about. We come from a place of friendship. We come from a place of we're working together to try to solve a problem. I always kind of liken it to when you're with a partner or a spouse or a person who you're intimate with in life. You very rarely come at them from an adversarial position. I shouldn't say that. Of course we come at them with an adversarial position, but generally the goal is to come together and build bridges and try to actually solve a problem together. Then you have distributive, which is negotiations involving what we call a fixed pie. We only have so much to talk about. Integrative is we can talk about all kinds of stuff. Well, what's going on over here? Can you actually cover the shipping costs for me? And if so, then I can pay your rate. Whereas distributive is saying we are only negotiating a settlement amount. I want 50,000 and you want to pay me 25. So we have, it's very exacting. You want specific information. So you have two different types that you're working toward. Generally, obviously, the integrative provides you with a lot more leeway as far as what you're trying to accomplish, but the distributive is very purposeful, and you're going to find yourself in this position regardless. It's going to happen, I can tell you that. Then we have the 3 phases of the negotiations. The first phase, now keep in mind that we're not talking, we haven't, before this even happens, we have done our prep work. We've done our research, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We've actually learned about the parties. We've understood our case or our issues really, really well. We want to know all of the issues, and we've done as much research as we can on what we believe, or at least put a little bit of thought into what we believe might be happening for the other side. So that's really important that we have that prep work in there. So the 3 phases after we do our prep work is the exchange of information. When we're sitting down with the other party, we're going to be exchanging that information, saying, okay, this is our position. This is what we're thinking. This is who we are too. Keep in mind that you can always qualify who you are and why you're there. Are you the owner of the company? Are you the attorney? Are you the representative who has the coolest head? But just make sure that you let them know, why are you there? Why are you the one who's chosen to negotiate this? Then move on to bargaining. That's, of course, very straightforward. We are talking with each other. We're working through the negotiation. And depending on the type of negotiation you're actually involved in, this bargaining can kind of manifest in a couple of different ways, as you can imagine. If we have a very narrow focus, the bargaining is very, very specific. If we have a more integrative focus, then we can talk about all kinds of things. And then, of course, after the negotiation, and believe it or not, this is just as important as all other 3 phases, is the closing. You want to make sure
Megan, you went on mute. Megan, can you hear me?
these people don't want to break up. They don't want to never speak to each other again, generally. There was a reason why they had the original contract, the original deal. Now, there are those instances where the personalities do not fit. The trust is completely lost. This relationship can never move forward in any capacity whatsoever. However, the majority of the time, I find people may still want to work together, or at least it's such a small world, our business world, they don't want to burn that bridge. Let's just say that. You don't want to burn the bridge. You don't want to get every single dollar you asked for, every single concession you asked for, and then lose out on that relationship. So this is the scene. This is the area where we can manage all of our relationships and possibilities, because that's what we're trying to make happen. We're trying to keep the options open for the future for ourselves. Now, these are some of the skills that I would love to see you guys work on if you don't feel confident in any of these areas. These are excellent skills to polish to become a good, successful negotiator. So, of course, effective speaking, that's really, really straightforward. Now, that seems really simple in and of itself, talking about that, but it's really just understanding the other party. How do they speak? For instance, and you can get a lot of that in the initial kind of relationship building. I like to break the ice. And you guys will laugh because when I'm sure when you picture attorneys, when we call each other on your behalf to negotiate a deal, that we're probably starting out, my client will take nothing less than $25,000. But that's actually not how we start out. We always start out, firstly, we do research on the other party, find out what firm they're with, maybe some organizations that they're a part of, and we establish rapport first. We say, hey, I saw that you wrote such and such article, or I see that you're a wish granter with Make-A-Wish Foundation, so am I. And we actually develop rapport first. And that's always really surprising to a lot of my clients. And I'm sure you all have heard this whenever you see attorneys, even in court, they're, hey, Joe, hey, Megan, how you doing? I'm great. Yep. And then the moment that we're in front of the judge, we are at it. Now in negotiations, it's not exactly that adversarial, but we definitely develop the rapport before we start jumping in to all of our demands. Obviously, effective listening. I think effective listening is one of those traits that will always serve you. I don't care what we're talking about, it will always serve you. I don't care if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a C-suite executive at a company, if you're a parent, if you're a spouse, it doesn't matter. Effective listening is key. And in fact, I'll talk about it at the end of the presentation. I have a blog that I've written on my website. It's called Shut Up. And that was actually something I was taught. In one of the seminars that I attended, the teacher made us all repeat over and over again. He kept making us say, shut up, shut up. And what he was really trying to say, right, is a really, really ear-cashing way of saying, let's go ahead and make sure that we're listening through everything that we're doing. In fact, I think this is the one skill that I would elevate above all of these skills when it comes to effective negotiation. Now, of course, self-confidence. Oh, and keep in mind too, a positive attitude going in, a sense of humor, and a sense of respect are really, really, really imperative. And I think all of that goes into kind of, you can establish that with your effective speaking and your effective listening. Even your effective listening can say to someone, I respect you and I'm patiently listening to you. And you can see how these skills can kind of meld into just one persona that you are putting out to someone. I don't think a sense of humor is actually a bad thing. Negotiations are stressful and people want to kind of relieve the stress a little bit. So I think it makes it a lot easier if we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we can kind of laugh at ourselves. We can take an issue seriously and not take ourselves seriously. I do it all the time. Of course, emotional intelligence is a big one. We want to make sure that we understand the other party. We can sense kind of their energy, their even just right off the bat. And you'll learn that. You'll see that. When I was talking earlier about building rapport with these attorneys when I first call them, I know within the first 30 seconds a ton about the other attorney. If the other attorney starts out and she says, okay, Megan, this is what we're doing. This is what we're going to get down to. This. I know that she doesn't have time to be friends. She doesn't have time to build rapport. And I'm not going to be able I'm going to have to jump right on in, and I'll have to be prepared for that. And vice versa, if I get someone on the phone and she's saying, hey, Megan, oh, I love that it's raining today. How about you? Oh, I love the rain in Arizona. I know that we can kind of work on a little bit of rapport building right up front. And so that takes some emotional intelligence. Of course, persistence, patience, creativity as you're working through this. It's really, really important to kind of be at ease in your own skin as you're negotiating. Now, there's something really important. In the beginning, you will not be at ease. And in fact, you shouldn't be. It's a new skill that you're developing. I really highly recommend that you try to maybe, whatever you do to calm yourself down prior to a negotiation, I highly recommend taking advantage of that for your own skills. So we're going to move on to a couple of review questions for you all. I believe Elizabeth has some polling questions queued up. So we'll give you guys a couple of minutes after, since we just discussed all this, to look through the polling questions and go ahead and poll your answers. The first question is, how many basic types of negotiations are there? And you choose between A, B, C, and D. The second question is, what are the two approaches to negotiation? And then the third question is, when we are talking about integrative negotiations, are they based on corporations, corruption, cooperation, cohesiveness? I'm not sure if you can get the polls up. Oh, there we go. Wonderful. So we'll just let everybody kind of answer. We'll give you a couple of minutes. We won't take too long. Awesome, awesome. All right, they're coming in. I think we'll do maybe another 10 10 seconds or so, Elizabeth?
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you for running this.
of course. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So do you want me to share the results?
Yeah, let's see the results real quick. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so what we have is we have how many basic types of negotiations are there? And there are 2 different types of negotiations. And actually, Elizabeth, my answers are on each. Yep, there we go. Awesome. And then what are the 2 types of negotiations? We have distributive and we have integrative. And remember, one is very, very focused, very, very issue driven. And the other one is very collaborative. Let's talk about all kinds of things. How can we, what issues can we bring to the table and resolve today? And then the third one is integrative negotiations are based on either corporations, corruption, cooperation, or cohesiveness. I love the alliteration. Of course it's cooperation. Of course it is. And it's what we want to do. We want to work together. We want to get to that space where we all are working in a cooperative way. Okay. Thank you for indulging me on that one, guys. We have more polling questions, and that's, I mean, really just to kind of refresh your memory on what we're discussing, and so that you, like I said, it allows us to interact a little bit on this one. Okay. So then when we talk about module 3, this is where we're talking about getting prepared. Like I was telling you before, it is utterly imperative that you guys do the prep work. Now the prep work looks like research, like I was saying, whatever you do to kind of calm down before a negotiation. If you meditate, if you pray, if you run, if you take supplements, whatever it is to get you to a place to where you can be super hyper focused, but also very calm through the negotiations. That is a wonderful space to be in. We want to make sure we also understand our issues, our own issues, pretty clearly. We don't want to get ourselves into a position where we don't know what we're talking about. Even, and especially if it's our own case or our own issues. And I say case kind of, let's call it a matter, just to make it so it's less like a lawyer. If we don't understand our own facts, nothing will degrade your credibility faster than you not knowing about your business, your issues, your matters than the other party. If the other party knows more than you, you might be in a bad position. So preparation involves a ton of negotiations, sitting down, actually laying out what all of the issues are, laying out what we call, and if you want to get to the next slide, Elizabeth, we'll talk about the BATNA and the WATNA. And this is really important. Make sure that you understand what these are before you go into the negotiation. What is the worst alternative to a negotiated agreement? So what happens if we can't negotiate? What is the absolute worst thing that could happen to us in this situation? Do we lose out on a big contract? Do we not have access to the internet? Do we lose a client? Do we lose an employee? And then we want to look at the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What's the absolute best thing that can happen here? We get the best CEO in the business. We get that government contract we've been going after for quite some time. So you want to make sure you know your WATNA and your BATNA before you get started. And again, this is your prep work. This is before you ever even meet with the other party. This is your prep. And we can, thank you. Okay. Now your WAP is your walkaway price. And I say that only because I want to make sure I'm very, very clear on what that acronym stands for. What we want to do is our walkaway price, we do not share that with anyone. That's that we know is our, oh, God, this is the lowest rung that we will participate in. So $25,000 is the lowest I can go and still cover my overhead and maybe get a little bit of profit. I also want you to remain firm in your WAP. You want to obtain concessions if that changes. So one of the things that's really important when it comes to concessions, and a concession is just I'm giving something up, is get something in return. So yes, of course, we can drop it down to $20,000 for our price, but you will cover all of our expenses and you will allow the timeline to be extended out another 3 months. Or you will drop it down to $20,000, but instead of a $5,000 implementation fee, it's a $10,000 implementation fee. Every time you concede, get something in return, whether it's with the WAP, whatever it is, I always want to see you get something in return. So have those built in. This is part of your prep work. Build those in there so you always know, oh, well, if we have to renegotiate this, or if I have to, and I'm sorry, there's actually, I think, a fire truck outside. If I have to concede on something here, then at least I'm going to get something back. And then be prepared to walk away. So this is the hard one, guys. This is a really hard one. And I see this happen a lot when my clients get into a position where they have what we call deal fatigue. And deal fatigue is absolutely real. And it's something I wanted to talk about for a quick second with you guys, because it's something that I don't see discussed enough. And deal fatigue is, I've been working on this contract for the last 3 months. I've been negotiating with these people. I've been putting forth as much as I possibly can. And by the time, and then now we're in negotiations, we're in our 3rd day of negotiations. And at this point, I would give them my firstborn if they would just sign the contract already. So what we have here is we have deal fatigue. Nothing has changed in the situation other than your stamina. So that's why I always tell you that your mental health is absolutely imperative in actually being a good negotiator. You want to make sure that you are in it for the long haul, that you don't give up at the very end, which we know 80% of the work will be done in the last 20% of your negotiations, by the way, right? That's the 80-20 rule, and it applies to negotiations. So we really want to make sure that we save up our energy for that last 20% of the negotiations where we're going to put in 80% of our work. And if that means that you have to walk away and you don't just say, all right, here's my firstborn, take whatever you want, that you are prepared to walk away and that you have some contingencies in place if possible. I know that that's not always possible, but you have some contingencies in place for yourself if you have to walk away from this deal. Okay? Now, our ZOPA is actually our zone of possible agreement. So where can we possibly agree? So you know how whenever you look at the circles that meet, and in the center you have, okay, well, this is where it overlaps. That's what I want you to picture your ZOPA being. This is the zone of possible agreement. It's, okay, is there a realistic price here? Do you understand what the market is asking for? That's a really great ZOPA if we understand that information. Many of us provide different services, or sometimes we have products that are really difficult to quantify, or there are additional issues that don't make this really a realistic market, fair market value price. But that's one option. It can look at the realistic price on what you're paying or what you're charging. That's a possible ZOPA for you. That's where that final price will sit. And then of course, however, keep your walkaway price secret. As always, make sure you're keeping that secret so that they don't know. Your realistic price may be far above your actual WAP. And I want to tell you a funny little anecdote about a client of mine where we negotiated a deal. And this is why you keep the WAP secret. And just for anybody who just jumped on, the WAP is your walk away price, The reason you want to keep that secret is because you never know what the other party is actually thinking. You never want to negotiate with yourself. So here's a great example. We were negotiating a rather large deal. It was a multi-million-dollar acquisition. And the other party came back to us with a price that was significantly higher than what we thought, what our walkaway price was. And we said to the other party, wow. And this is a great example in not giving up too much and having some of these canned responses in the queue so that you can pull them out. And we looked at the price and we said, that wasn't the price we were actually thinking. And they said, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. They came back and presented us with more money. So we didn't actually give up the fact that that price was significantly higher than we thought we were going to get. All we said was, wow, that wasn't the price we were actually thinking. And they came back with more money. It's interesting when you start getting into these negotiations, how you can see that by not saying certain things, sometimes you're in a better position than if you did even present yourself. People are generally willing to fill in a void, and especially I found this in particular in negotiating in the United States. We never want to offend somebody or upset them with a price, so we will actually supplement a price for them even though they haven't given us their own number. Okay. So here's your personal preparation. This is what I love to see. There's absolutely never, and never in my career, and I've negotiated quite a few deals even prior to becoming an attorney, I have never had to be impolite. Never, not once. And I negotiate multi-million-dollar deals. So I don't ever find that you ever have to be in a position where you have to be rude to the other party. However, you can be firm. So I always think of this as kind of like, I'm a mother, so I always think of how I am with my children. We're always polite. Please come in and finish the dishes, right? It's very firm, it's very direct. There's no wiggle room in it, but I'm also being very, very firm with them. I'm also being very calm, because when you're very calm, it can take a room. I'm telling you, I have watched excellent negotiators walk in to a room that's buzzing, and just by their demeanor, their calm approach, their face, the way they speak, if they speak slowly, if they take breaths, if they take a moment between what the other person said and them responding, it can take an entire room down. So I find that by being calm, it evokes a sense of trust in the other party, and it allows you to work towards a more collaborative, more of a compromising position. And then this is a really, really big one. I don't know if you all have ever heard of the 4 Agreements. It's a wonderful book. And one of the 4 agreements that we make with everyone in our life, and this applies 100% to negotiations, is do not take anything personally. Now, as lawyers, we are especially skilled at this because we are actually agents of our client. This isn't my business. It's not my money. It's not my livelihood. It's not where my whole family works, right? You are a client of mine. So it's a lot easier for me to not take things personally, because it's literally not about me. But when I am in a position where I'm negotiating on my own behalf, I have to practice this same type of mindset. So my suggestion is, and this is going to sound a little strange, but try to imagine yourself as your own client, right? Try to imagine yourself as, I am a representative, and you actually are. If you're negotiating on behalf of your business is separate from you. I know it feels like our baby, but it actually is its own legal, it has personhood. So think of yourself as being the agent responsible for the company. So then you don't take any of those things personally, especially if somebody tries to engage in ad hominems. They try to attack you as a person. Just roll right on through. I had a great story from a client who did collections. And he used to do collections all the time, and he would call on behalf of his own company. And so he'd call, and this guy kept threatening him and threatening him and threatening him. And I can't believe you're doing this, and this is terrible, and I'm going to come down there and beat you up. And my client said, well, bring your checkbook. So he didn't allow to dig into his skin. He kept very, very focused on the issue at hand, which is, I need you to pay your bill. Thanks, Elizabeth. So we have some polling questions, of course. We have 3 of them. Just so you know, we have 3 at a time. You'll be happy to know that Elizabeth advocated for you all. I had 10 in each one, and she said, oh, no, Megan, do not do this to anyone. So we have 3 in each module to kind of lighten it up, but I'll let Elizabeth launch the poll. And obviously the first question is, negotiation requires, is it whining, preparation, cash reserves, or gumption? The second one is, what are 2 things you must have in order to approach negotiations skillfully? Is it law and order, coffee and treats, which, you know, I did discuss donuts at one point, self-confidence and a positive attitude, or fear and loathing, an excellent book, by the way, And then the third one is getting the best deal for yourself relies on you being ready to go into negotiations with the strongest blank position you can. Is it a bargaining position, a bullying position, intimidation, unrelenting? So we'll give y'all a little bit more time to get your answers in. And then we'll see what the poll says.
We'll give it 15 more seconds or so.
Okay. Surprised nobody's choosing whining. I mean, that seems to be my 9-year-old's approach to it all. I asked her the other day, I said, baby, how many times has this worked for you? Why do you keep using it as an option? How many times has mama said, oh yes, 100%, I will give you the candy now that you've whined about it?
Okay. We'll end it now.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so of course, negotiation requires preparation. That's what we were talking about in this module. It's absolutely imperative that we run through the preparation, that we put as much effort into it as we possibly can. Believe it or not, the majority of your work will actually begin prior to you sitting down with the other party and negotiating with them. I do a ton of research prior to any of my negotiations. I mean, a ridiculous amount. And thankfully, we have the internet, y'all. So previously, this was significantly more difficult, but now we are literally putting all of our private information out onto the internet, so you can learn a lot about the other party, their business, what they're into. This is how you develop rapport. This is how you understand what their position may be, even before you meet them. And then, of course, number 2, what are the 2 things you must have in order to approach negotiations successfully? Self-confidence and a positive attitude. I cannot stress the positive attitude enough. Of course, confidence you can grow into, but try to approach each negotiation as if you're just solving a problem. Make it a game. Make it fun for yourself. Try to enjoy it. And maybe, and I'm going to give you all an assignment. It's going to be very different from other assignments you've probably received. I'm going to give you all an assignment to practice. One of my biggest tips for most of my negotiation clients is to go ahead and practice before you actually have to engage in the big negotiation. Means a lot to you. And I'll give you a couple of practice tips, even if it's with your partner, your children, your grandmother, your mother-in-law, well, maybe not the mother-in-law, but somebody else who's less intimidating than the mother-in-law. Try practicing negotiating with them first so you can come in with a little more self-confidence and a positive attitude. And then, of course, number 3 is getting the best deal. Getting the best deal for yourself relies on you being ready to go into negotiations with the strongest bargaining position possible. This is awesome. I'm so happy that none of you chose bullying or intimidating. I would not have been doing my job if those were the options. So yes, 100%. You want to go into having the best bargaining position possible. So that's why you do your research. That's why you understand and you do your research not only on what your strengths are in your case, in your matter, in your position, but where are your weaknesses, and is there any way that you can overcome those weaknesses? For instance, I was negotiating a deal with a client, and one of the big things that they were arguing about before I even got involved was who would own the name of the company. And so I talked to my client and I said, well, this seems like this is a big deal. Are you in love with the name? And he said, well, not really. I could take it or leave it. And I said, then we're going to put that on our concession list. We aren't going to give it up to them. We're not going to tell them right away. We'll fight for it, but we're going to put that on our list to say, yeah, you know, in the end, you can have the name, but I'm going to need $15,000 more on my price in order for you to own the name. So you can actually have those in the queue ready for what their position may very well be. And then of course you fight for it. And I'll talk about why you fight for it in a little bit. You'll fight for it, but then you can always concede on it and get something larger in return that you want. So good job, you guys. This is great. This is wonderful work. Okay, so now we want to lay the groundwork. This is where we set the time and the place, we establish common ground, we create our negotiation arcs. Now, when we were talking about preparation before, obviously we were talking about doing research. We have access to the internet. We have a lot of stuff online that we can pull from. But, oh, you know what, actually, Elizabeth, I just realized that it's 1 minute to 10. Would you like me to wait on module 4 to get started so we can do our break?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take our 5-minute break now, and we'll return back at around 10:05.
Okay, sounds good. See y'all in a minute. Awesome. Okay, so here we're going to talk about setting the time and place, establishing the common ground, having a networking framework. Like I was telling you all before, I wasn't joking when I said that the amount of prep that goes into a negotiation can be quite substantial. Now, the time and place is a really, I should rather say the place is a really interesting situation to observe during a global pandemic. I'm sure you all have been in those positions where you're taking calls and doing different things remotely that you didn't before. Even this interaction right now, we had some technical difficulties. You know, Elizabeth is running my screen. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. So my suggestion would be that if you do have to do something online, virtually, or even just on the phone, that you find a way to make sure that you're checking everything out prior to, ensuring that the other party has the same capabilities that you do, and maybe even doing a practice run if you can, to make sure that you aren't lost in the technical world or some of the technical mishaps that can happen, because that can really throw a negotiation. If I'm on speakerphone with someone and I'm really trying to actively listen, it becomes even more important that I can hear every single word that they're saying, the tone of their voice, the hesitancy, all of those things, because that's all I have. We actually, I don't know if you all knew this, but the majority of our communications as humans is done through nonverbal communication. So as I move my hand, smiling when I'm talking, winking at you when I'm saying something funny, those are things that your body is receiving aside from my verbal communication. And we actually, it's something like 90% of our communications is nonverbal. So whenever we're on a call and we can't see a person, it makes it significantly more difficult. It can be done. I do it all day, every day, but it does take a little bit of prep work. And I recommend practicing it. Why not call a friend and kind of negotiate where you're eating dinner that night, or call your child and see if you can get them to do their homework before dinner tonight. You know, something along those lines where you're kind of anticipating what it would be like to have a difficult conversation via Zoom or on a phone. And we can go to the next slide, Elizabeth. So setting the time and place, if you are in control of the time and place, it can be an advantage of yours. So it depends on the type of negotiation. If you are trying to wine and dine an investor or somebody who you want to come on, you may actually find a place. You may do your research and find out what's their favorite place. Do they like Mastro's? Do they like some of the, or do they prefer actually kind of less fancy meals? Maybe they like Indian food, maybe, who knows? And you take them to the best place in Phoenix. That can be a real advantage to you, knowing that information and having them in a space where they're naturally happy, because when we're up and we're happy, our prefrontal cortex is open, it's alive, it's firing, it's ready to absorb information and be collaborative and have that higher cognitive functioning, which makes them a much more effective negotiator with you. You want to make sure you take into consideration environmental factors, however. So I do not recommend negotiating at a bar. Now, that happens so much, you guys. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but it can get really loud when people become intoxicated. And if you do negotiate at a bar, and I feel this way about networking, to be honest with you, and I know that sometimes it's nice to have a glass of wine to kind of give some liquid courage, especially if you're talking to strangers. But one of my rules is I do not drink, well, with any business transaction, but in particular in negotiations and networking. And the reason is because you never know. You could have had a stressful day. You could have maybe missed lunch that day, and you have no idea how quickly that alcohol can hit you. And I don't ever want you to be in a position where you are compromised because of some substance. So I like the environmental factors to be controlled. Can you hear them? Are there a lot of people? Will you have a lot of interruptions? And actually, believe it or not, sometimes interruptions are good. If it's a highly stressful, highly emotional negotiation, it might be good to do it at a restaurant where a server will come around every once in a while and interrupt the conversation and diffuse some of the conversations. That's very rare though. Think very, very hard about whether or not you want to have those interruptions or not. Of course, limiting distractions, or like I said, having those distractions built in. And then a neutral venue can be really good as well, especially if it's a situation where someone is coming to you. You can either host them at your location and treat them really well, or if it's very like I said, if it's very adversarial, you might want to find a neutral venue that neither one of you has a vested interest in. You don't want them to walk onto your position, onto your turf, if you will, if that's going to make them feel intimidated and uncomfortable and they're going to withhold. Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to elicit words and emotions and feelings and thoughts and collaboration from that person. So if they're going to be in an environment that makes them uncomfortable, they're not going to do that. So again, do your research. Even something as simple, do they drink? I don't drink. I actually don't feel as comfortable in a bar as I do in just a regular restaurant. It'd be pretty easy to find that out about me. And so if you want to negotiate with me, I'll feel more comfortable in a space that doesn't have a lot of alcohol, for instance. So learn that about the other person. Find out where they feel most comfortable, and then try to pick that place. We can go on the next one. So when we're, there we go, perfect. So we want to establish common ground. I apologize. We want to find common ground first. This is where I always start you guys in my negotiations. And it's really fun actually. And I literally say to them, hey, let's talk about the things that we can agree on first. And this does a couple of things for the negotiation. One, it starts us out from a place of positivity, right? I know we can agree on the fact that the shipping rate is going to be $5 per box. We already agree on that. And we get to, it feels really good. It feels really good to check it off of the box too. Oh, yes, we did that. Then we were going to build on that. Whatever that collaborative space is, I like starting there. Let's start on the things we can agree on, and then we build on that. So I like to do a tiered. I go to the next more difficult situation or issue, and then the next and the next and the next. I just keep taking it to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, until we finally get to some of those issues where we go, gosh, I don't know if we're going to agree on this one. I seriously have no idea which way this could go. What that does is it helps set the stage for that positivity, but it also makes you feel really good about getting that work done. You got all of that work done in the beginning so that you're not hammering out the most difficult issues first, and then y'all are too exhausted to even talk about the remainder. It kind of builds up the rapport. It helps you increase your energy. It helps you increase your confidence. So start from a place of collaboration and where y'all can agree first. So we also need to agree on what's being negotiated. What is off the table? And if any of you have partners, if any of you have children, if any of you have in-laws, you know what I'm talking about. Let's talk about what our non-negotiables are. What I love about negotiations, what I love about contracts, and I can talk about contracts until the sun comes up. I'm sure you all already figured that out because the name of my company is Your Contract Shop. So I'm like the least interesting gal at the party. But what I love about contracts is it is your written boundaries. These are your written boundaries. It's the same thing in creating this negotiation framework and this arc that you're going to be working under. You want to agree what's going to be negotiated on. What are we talking about today? What are the non-negotiables? And are these things based in our values and our goals? And this is really important. I have found that in my business, I am more successful when I have a mission, when I have vision, when I have values, because they help to guide every decision I'm going to make. And this should extend out into your negotiations as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about a book called Conscious Capitalism that I absolutely love. And it talks about really elevating your business to the next level, where you're taking these values and goals in your mission statement, and it is being applied to every interaction you have. And I think that should be the same for your negotiation framework. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that I am never rude. I never raise my hand. I never engage in any ad hominems. I don't ever get into a fight with the other party, because that's one of my values. That's one of my goals, to create a peaceful, collaborative environment, even within my own contract dispute practice. So I promise, if I can do it as an attorney, negotiating these terms that have already kind of blown up, let's be honest, by the time I get it, it's pretty bad, that I promise you can do that. And it makes you feel really good about the work that you're doing when it is aligned with your goals and the values of your business, or your own personal, if you're a sole proprietor, just yourself. Okay, so this is the negotiation process. We have preparation, which we have beaten to death. Preparation, preparation, preparation. I cannot stress enough. I could actually have a full 90 to 120 minute conversation on preparation alone, but I will never do that to you all. But really, really do your research as much as you possibly can. Prepare the situation. Then you have your opening position. Now your opening position will be, okay, well, where am I at? What am I presenting to you? Some people open with an extreme high. Some people open with an extreme low. Some people will come very close to what their position actually is. Some people will kind of dilly-dally around it. It really depends on the situation that you're in. And again, when we were talking about before, you'll learn a lot about the other party with your preparation. And then even from the first moment you meet that person, how do they shake your hand? Are they really assertive and they shake your hand really in a very assertive way, and they look at you and they're very, very pointed? Well, you know that your opening position may have to be one that's a little firmer than what you originally went into. So have a couple, be malleable in how you approach it. Generally, I will be honest with you, and this is not always an opportunity, but I don't like to necessarily always put out the opening position. I kind of like to let them come to me with their first number. This can't always be done. It takes quite a bit of practice and finagling to get out of presenting a number. I can tell you that right now. It's one of the more difficult things that I've learned. But if you can get them to kind of give up some of their position first, and a lot of that happens really in the rapport building that we did in the beginning. It doesn't actually happen in the negotiation. So if you can get them to give you the first number, that will help you understand where their position is, so that you're not negotiating with yourself. Like the guy did with us when we were negotiating that multi-million-dollar deal, and all I said was, that wasn't the number I was thinking of. I'm gonna give it 1 second because the ambulance is going by again. Then we transition from the opening position into bargaining. So I say, I will sell you my watch for $500. You say, I will purchase it for $250. And then we go back and forth. And this is where the movement comes in. So we're bargaining, we're moving some things around. Okay, well, fine, I'll buy it for $300, but it has to include a 1-year warranty. Okay, well, I can do it for $350 with the 1-year warranty, but you got to pay all of the cash by 5 p.m. today. So can you see how we're opening up the pie, even on something that seems as simple as just me purchasing your watch? We went from just talking about the amount of money we're going to spend to talking about, well, how is it going to be delivered? How is it going to be packaged? Is there a warranty? How are the payment terms going to work? And let me tell you all that payment terms, you know, how much of an implementation fee, how quickly it needs to be paid, whether it's paid in advance, whether it's paid after 90 days, net 40, however you negotiate it. That is one way, very, very quick, easy way to expand that pie. How are we getting paid? Okay, I'll take your $350, but you got to give it to me by 5 p.m. today, and it's got to be through Venmo. It's got to be in immediately available funds, okay? And then, of course, after the movement and you move around and you get everything kind of situated, then that's the closing. This is where we're making sure that we're still friends afterward. We are in a small world. And I'm sure you all have already experienced that. We are in such a small world. We always run into each other in some form or fashion. I don't ever want you to have to walk away from a negotiation feeling like you were beat up or you beat up the other person. It doesn't, it's not the long game. It's not a collaborative long game for you. So see if you can still be friends at the end of it. Okay. So Rosie couldn't, this is a case study. So Rosie couldn't keep her eyes open. Noticing that Rosie was tired, Emily went to the rescue. They determined that she was the most productive, that Emily was the most productive, not Rosie. And Emily showed Rosie some exercises she could do in her cubicle. Okay. So this is actually, believe it or not, a small negotiation. Rosie and Emily were going into a negotiation together, right? They had to work on a project together. When Emily noticed that Rosie was tired, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to take over, I'm going to go ahead and determine that I'm productive right now, and I'm going to show you some of the exercises that I can do in my cubicle. It's a very, very simple collaborative approach to solving a problem. That's all negotiations are. It's just solving a problem. So we have some more poll questions coming up for Module 4. I'll let Elizabeth load those in. So the first one is setting the time and place, establishing groundwork, and creating a negotiation framework are other aspects of the negotiation, initiation, preparation, or celebration. The second question is setting the time and place can give you a blank in a negotiation. Does it give you an advantage, absolution, abstraction, or absence? And then where do you feel the most comfortable conducting a negotiation? In a restaurant, over the phone, on their home turf, or in a dark alley? Maybe another 20 seconds, Elizabeth.
Yes, we'll give it a little bit more. Okay, we'll stop sharing.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, setting the time and place, establishing common ground, and creating a negotiation framework are aspects of your preparation phase. It's also part of the negotiation. So anybody who said negotiation, of course, yes, 100% you're correct. And actually even initiation is kind of getting there. So you guys were all pretty close, but it's really part of the preparation phase, the pre-negotiation work that you're doing. And then of course, everybody understood that setting the time and place gives you an advantage. And then where do you feel most comfortable? I love that you guys put restaurant. That says a lot about where we like to eat whenever we're doing our good work, which I do as well, but really it's on their home turf. We really want them to feel comfortable. So that's where they feel the most comfortable. So if we were negotiating, you and I, you would feel more comfortable negotiating with me in your office than you would anywhere else or in your home. So when you're in a restaurant, if it's your restaurant, you'd feel really comfortable there. Now that is a neutral third party or neutral place that kind of deals with the fact that I'm most comfortable in my office and you're most comfortable in your office, so we'll meet somewhere else. But really, people feel most comfortable doing the work on their own home turf. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so now we're exchanging information. And this is really important. It's really important to exchange information with the other party. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're stating our position that and remember, we laid the groundwork. We're stating our position. We're putting all of the information out there. What are our non-negotiables? What are we negotiating? And then you want to make sure you're doing it in a non-confrontational way. This is really hard because for two reasons. One, being non-confrontational in a quasi-adversarial position is very difficult. And two, you aren't exactly sure what to hold back and what not to hold back in the beginning. So I'll give you a couple of tips on some of the things that you can do to kind of determine where you're at. You want to start off right on the right foot. Start with small talk. Like I said, this is very hard for some people. My mom, for instance, is one of those people who has a lot of trouble with small talk. She's an amazing powerhouse. She was the president and CEO of a casino. She was the only female, and so she didn't have time to ask you how your kids were, or she wanted to get right down to business. But unfortunately, because of that, and she's talked to me about this, she missed out on certain things when she was negotiating. So believe it or not, small talk is really, really important. And I'm not talking about where you guys basically get off on a 30-minute tangent about, golden doodle dogs. I'm talking about getting to know the person a little bit and really actively listening to them. Keep in mind that this is a phase in a negotiation. It is not icing. It's actually part of the preparation. So actively listen to that person. See how they respond to your questions. Are they a little uptight? And maybe some of the humor can kind of can calm that down, because remember, we're trying to open up their prefrontal cortex. We don't want them to be defensive, because when we're defensive, we cannot think clearly. We only go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, and our higher cognitive functioning shuts down, and that's all we can do. We can't even really think clearly. All we're thinking about is fighting, flighting, or freezing. We also want to show that we're human, of course, that always helps. This was actually a really phenomenal lesson I learned when I was a grant writer. When I would write grants, I would actually include pictures of the individuals who would be benefiting from these grants. The reason I did this is because people work with and people give money to other people, not even causes. They give money to other people. So we want to make sure that when we're talking through these things, that the other party knows that they're negotiating with another human being. We don't want to dehumanize ourselves, which is, again, this is a misconception when you think about lawyers negotiating. You picture a suit, literally, and just negotiating back and forth. But we have to create a sense of who we are. And then, of course, introductions are important. Why are you here? Why are you the one that they chose to negotiate this thing? Who are you? What's your expertise? If you have expertise in that area, and we're talking about understanding what information to share and what not to share, I will tell you this, sometimes it's actually not in your best interest to give up your expertise. And the reason is because when you are an expert, sometimes people withhold information because they don't want to look stupid in front of you, right? They don't want to say something and go, oh, and this happens to lawyers all the time. People start saying some weird stuff around me when they find out I'm a lawyer. So if you're an expert in an area, you may not want to give up the level of expertise. Obviously, you'll have to tell them who you are, why you're there, what your position is. But maybe if you have this extra training, or you spent 5 years studying this one particular subject and you know it inside and out, maybe hold back on that and release that information when it's your benefit. When you are sharing, these are some tips on sharing, some little tricks. You want a detailed statement of your position. And that will be in front of you. What's my position? We have to get the bridge built by July 4th so we can have a big kickoff and the city can raise funds that will fund not only the building of the bridge, but a nonprofit organization that we want to work with. So being as specific on your issues as well. So detailed statement, your specific issues. The issues are that we don't have the funding. We haven't selected the contractor yet. We need some additional marketing help, right? So very, very specific between these dates and what we need. And then, of course, general topics of discussion that you're all going to be talking about. So today, we're going to talk about building the bridge. We're going to talk about obtaining funding. You can leave it there. Oh, we're going to talk about obtaining funding. And we're going to talk about some additional in-kind services that we may need from everyone. Okay, and you're going to find that you're recapping issues over and over and over again. Don't worry, you can't say it too many times. Obviously, you don't want to annoy the other side, but this is how we manage our expectations and we effectively communicate, is by repeating ourselves a number of times, actually. Okay, what are the things that should be kept to yourself? This is so tricky, and this is actually a really important part of the communication, and you don't want to be so tight-lipped that the other side can't do anything with the information that they give you, but you also don't want to be kind of dribbling and give them all their information. Now, this is something that's very, very important I need to tell you about human psychology. We do not like silence. Did that make everyone uncomfortable? Yeah, I know. We don't like it. We want to fill it. So this is why in my blog, where I talk about silence in negotiations and how to leverage it, you will see there are many times when I have negotiated deals, and I kid you not, I have negotiated deals where I have been silent. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's the funniest thing to me. I will literally just sit there when somebody presents a position, and many times I'm not purposefully being silent for effect, but many times I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking, I'm analyzing whether that will work for my client, what the potential downfalls are, and all of a sudden the other party, if they're not skilled, will start to volunteer information, concessions, my position. And it's been a very interesting case study. I knew about this through my negotiation training, but I will tell you, it's been one of the more surprising things that has come up in my own personal negotiations is silence can be leveraged. So so here's my rule, my tip for you. If you are not sure whether or not to share it yet, don't share it. Hold on to it until it is in your benefit, to your benefit. So earlier when we were talking about, do you tell them you're an expert in this subject or not? Well, we're going to hold on to it until, and then if they start saying things that are not factually correct about an industry or your subject matter, then you can start correcting them. Then that's when you give up that information. Oh, I understood that you said this, but what I found in the field of study when I spent 5 years studying this topic, and I have my MBE in this topic, is this, this, and this, right? So then you volunteer that information in that moment. You always want to start with some of the general issues. You don't want to get super, super specific other than this is what we're discussing. And then you want to set the scene for some of your in-depth negotiations as far as kind of what you're keeping to yourself. So if there are general informations or general concessions, things that we can concede on immediately, let's start with those. But then maybe save some of that information for some of the in-depth negotiations that you might have later. So again, the price for the widgets is going to be $5,000 per widget. And then later you can talk about, oh, and by the way, we own our own trucking company, so we can cover all of the shipping fees. Okay. So you kind of hold on to that so that you can get something in return. Don't just volunteer all of it. So I can't say this enough. I cannot stress this enough. People do not like silence. Leverage it and don't fall for it. Don't fall for the silence game. You can stay quiet as long as they can. I promise you. I've done it before, and I'm a talker, clearly. Okay. And let's skip past this case study because I want to make sure we're getting all of the information in. Okay, so we've got some review questions, some polling questions. The first question is, the first phase of negotiation involves a blank of information. So we either overload them, we undercut them, we exchange the information, or we withdraw the information. The second question is, both sides state their position on the issues being addressed in a blank way. Is it an upfront way, a non-confrontational way, in an absurd way, or in a non-committed way? And then 3, at the start of a negotiation, you don't want to give a blank statement about your position on specific issues. You don't want to give a cordial, a pleasant, a detailed, or an initial.
We'll give it another 15 seconds or so. Okay.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So the first phase in a negotiation involves an exchange of information. Yes, 100%. We're exchanging information. Of course, we're not giving up everything that we have on our sheet of paper, right? Because we've got our notes. We're not giving up everything, but we are going to exchange some information. And then both sides during that phase will exchange the information in a non-confrontational way. It's literally like you're stating a fact. This is where all of your preparation work is going to come in handy, and especially whatever work you need to do to make sure that you are not presenting yourself in an adversarial position. So you're just stating the facts. Number 3, of course, at the start of the negotiation, you don't want to give a super detailed statement about your position. However, make sure you have that detailed statement on your sheet of paper in front of you. You're going to give them the details that are relevant so that you can start. And again, here's the factual, non-confrontational portion of this, but you're not going to inundate them with every position you have. We can't do this because we lost such and such account and we can't afford it. Or we're about to lose a partner, so we aren't going to have as much funding as we always had. I've seen people say these things. These are actual things that people have said. So you don't want to get super detailed, but you definitely want to make sure that you know your position inside and out. And if you don't feel comfortable writing it down because you think somebody will see it, just make sure you have that detailed statement memorized, or at least somehow you have all of those details enumerated in your brain. Okay, so now we're going to talk about bargaining. This is really where we get into the meat of the negotiations and what we're doing here. This is the phase when most people think of negotiations. Remember, I was telling you what they're thinking of. They think that this is the phase. What you all should notice is that we're in module 6 before we even got to the bargaining phase. So much of the work is done prior to us even sitting down with the other party. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that. So when you talk about the bargaining phase, we can go on the next one. You're excellent at this, Elizabeth, by the way. Do we usually, what is this person's position? Do they typically start out with an unreasonable offer? I see this so much, you guys, it almost exhausts me. You know, we're negotiating something that's $500,000 and they come to me with 1.2 million. Okay, all right. I know that that's where you're starting. I know that that's maybe what you think an effective negotiator does, but it's really truly not. You want to build in a contingency. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. You want to build in a buffer so you have some room to come down for. But when somebody starts out with this extremely high or extremely low unreasonable offer, generally you kind of know, okay, well, either they're unskilled or this is generally a negotiation tactic that they have. But the truth is that you waste a lot of time and energy trying to get back to a place of reasonableness. It also can degrade your credibility. So now, not doing this yourself is one thing, but understanding that about the other person is another thing. So you'll know when they do that you're going to have to reserve some energy to spend getting you down to the reasonable level. Also, do they try to rush through the negotiation? That usually tells me that that person is unskilled when they're rushing through it because they want to get through it. They haven't truly had enough negotiations under their belt to know that there's such thing as deal fatigue, that 80% of the work that we're going to do is going to be done at the last 20%, and that they're very uncomfortable. They don't want to do this. So generally what I do in that situation when you have another party rushing the negotiation is I slow everything down on my side. I slow down my speech. I slow down my answers. I take nice, long, deep breaths in between the conversations. I take many breaks because I need that person to come down off of their anxiety space. And then, of course, do they try to frame the issues according to their own advantage? Remember previously, what we're doing is we're actually presenting our issues in a non-confrontational, non-biased way. So if the other person says to me, well, we're never going to agree to your terms because your client is a jerk. Well, that's a very obviously confrontational and very biased perspective. So what I know about them is, again, they're unskilled. but I'm also going to, what I do know is I'm going to have to work through some emotional stuff there, guys. And this is a part of negotiations that I think when I'm teaching this, people are usually like, I just want to get down to the issues. But this is absolutely a human interaction. This is an emotional endeavor that you're going to undertake. So I suggest just going in full board, jump in with both feet and understand that. And when you see these people who try to rush, who have unreasonable offers, who try to frame the issues in a very kind of to their own advantage, just know that there's going to be some emotional work you're going to have to do to bring them back to a collaborative space with you. And it's going to be trust building, humor, honesty, patience, slowing down your speech. All of those things can help to bring back the negotiation to a collaborative space. You can also, with some of these techniques, whenever you are presented with this person, is to prepare. Know everything about that person, know everything about the issue, know everything about the market. You want to leave behind your ego. Remember, we talked about not taking things personally. Don't take it personally. It really isn't about you. Keep that in mind. This is one of the things we have to learn as attorneys, and not all lawyers know this. I mean, I have lawyers who actually call me names, and I remember, this isn't even your company that you're calling me this name about. You want to ramp up your listening skills, just like we talked about before. This is utterly imperative in all of your negotiations. So when they're talking, if somebody is extremely rushed, very nervous, let them talk. Remember, like I said, sit there silently and let them know, I'm just taking notes. I'm taking notes. Go ahead, please continue. I'm just going to take a few notes while you're talking, if you don't mind. I'll let you tell your side of the story and then I'll jump in. Don't let me interrupt, right? Let them go. Let them get it out. That's serving two purposes. One, you're learning a lot. Like I said, people will start literally vomiting information onto you, but you're also allowing them to get it off of their chest. I can tell you that even with my own clients, and when I'm negotiating a contract dispute, there's so many times when they will come, when they just need to have their story heard. Their day in court, if you will. Let them have their day in court with you. Let them tell you their side of the story, okay? You want to anticipate compromise. We walk in with a positive attitude. I'm going to find a solution to this, and it's going to be collaborative, and we're going to compromise on it. And keep in mind, if you don't ask for it, you will not get it. That is very, very important. There's another book I'm going to refer you to, has a ridiculously long title, and it's called In Business as in Life, You Don't Get What You Deserve, You Get What You Negotiate. And that is absolutely true. You have to ask for it. I think we'll go to the next one. Okay, this is an important section. How do we break an impasse? An impasse is merely defined as a situation in which two parties can't move forward in something, or our progression is blocked. So if it's money, change the terms, like we were discussing before. Bigger deposit, shorter pay period. If you need to change team members, that works really well. One of the key tips I always tell everyone, and this is a really great positioning place that we're in as lawyers, is never be the final authority. And this is hard when you own your own business, but go ahead and defer to your lawyer. Pretend like you have one, right? Oh, I got to talk to my lawyer about this, or your CPA, one of the experts that you rely on. Yeah, let me just confirm that with my CPA that works. Let me just ask my lawyer to make sure that those change in the terms aren't gonna break us. Or you just change out a team member. If you have partners, if you have a manager you trust, changing a team member in a very, very difficult, highly stressful situation can change the entire outcome of a negotiation. And then of course, try to agree on the issue, the easy issues first. That's how to break an impasse. So we're sitting here and we're hammering each other with these terms. And I go, hold on. We're not getting anywhere on that one. Let's look through our list that we have here and see what we can talk about. Can we agree on the shipping charges? Can we agree on the fact that it's delivered by December 22nd? Can we agree on those things? Okay, cool. Let's agree on those first and get yourselves to a great agreement place. Take a break, come back, and then tackle the difficult issues. Okay. All right, and I think we have some review questions coming up again, and we'll do this one quickly. I want to make sure I save enough time for questions for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to start speaking fairly quickly, but I know Elizabeth is going to provide you, if you want to queue up the poll, I know Elizabeth is going to provide you with this presentation afterward. So you'll be able to go back through it. You know, I'm not sure if anyone's taking notes, but you'll have all of this in front of you. So I am going to start speaking fairly quickly now. So Elizabeth, why don't we just go to 1 minute on the poll questions, just to make sure that, and if we need to on the remainder of the session, we won't do the poll. We'll just talk about it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm cognizant of everyone's time because we're all running businesses here.
Great, we'll give it about 30 more seconds. So if you want to answer those questions.
Okay.
Okay, so for time purposes, I'll go ahead and just close it out. I know we're getting a couple more. Okay, close it out.
Awesome. Perfect. Yes, 100% correct. What is considered the heart of the negotiation process? Of course, bargaining. This is what we've been talking about this whole time. This is what y'all wanted to hear about. In addition to learning about the pressures, blank, and needs that might influence your opponents, you might also want to try to get some idea of their usual negotiation approach, their wants. Their wants and their needs are really, really important. What do they actually want? What do they actually need? And what does the term scout your opponent mean? It means to get a rundown on their negotiation techniques. So what are they doing? Do they come in hot and heavy? Do they have a collaborative approach? Do they have a very relaxed appeal? Are they funny? Are they jovial? Are they positive? All of those things will tell you a lot about your approach and how you can come at them. We speak volumes to each other when we're just chatting. So this is where we're talking about this wonderful book, Getting to Yes. I highly recommend it. I have it here. This is obviously one of the ways, or one of the covers, but there's a number of them. This book is used quite often with attorneys when they're actually training us about negotiations in law school. It's actually not very long, which is great, and it has a ton of case studies. It has a ton of information in it. It's less than 200 pages. I would get this book and I would keep it on your bookshelf whenever you're about to engage in negotiations. I would read it all the way through, make sure you take some notes, highlight it so that you can come back to it. It is wonderful, wonderful. What Roger Fisher and William Ury are trying to do with this book, of course, is they're trying to create, and I know this sounds very zen, they're trying to create a more peaceful and collaborative world. And they believe that people are unsuccessful because they are arguing about their position. This is how I feel rather than my interest. This is what I need, right? So what they're suggesting is that you focus on your interests. What are your interests? What do you need? What does the company need to get out of this? So again, I can't bring my price down, but if you cover the shipping because you have all of your own trucks, then we can get to where we need. I just can't cover your shipping. That is where we should focus our energies, according to Ury and Fisher. And we can go to the next one. Okay, so there are 3 ways to see your options that are available to you. We can do this soft positional bargaining. This is where we're kind of talking about friends and we're in agreement with them. Then we have positional bargaining that is hard. We're focusing on victory only, creates a sense of distrust. Or when we do our interest bargaining, we're looking to the other party. What can the other party get out of this too? And we're collaboratively problem solving through the whole process. So this is my favorite, by the way. Interest bargaining is my absolute favorite. We can go to the next slide. Mutual gain. This is where we focus on our interests. We want to make sure that the interests are mutual. We have an atmosphere of respect. And we provide multiple options. That's why when we come to the table with additional options. Now, some of those options may not present themselves to us until after we've done our active listening. But be open, like I said, have that prefrontal cortex open. This is the only way we make creative decisions, is when we come into a space that is one of respect and collaboration. If we view the other party as being against me, then you cannot see the roads that are available and in front of you. We'll do the next slide. When we're creating a mutual gain solution, we want to go through some brainstorming, talk through it with the other person. Well, what about this? How about this? Have you guys ever thought about buying in bulk, for instance? Maybe you can buy more and then we can bring the cost per item down. You want to identify any shared values. You know, I know that you put your clients first like we do. I get that. And you try to keep your overhead low so that you can pass those savings on to your clients. And we do the same thing. So let's talk about how we get there. You can make the solution bigger or smaller, right? You can bring it down to its minutia. So again, when we were talking about, hey, well, maybe you can buy it in bulk, or maybe you can purchase less time, right? So however you can kind of move that around so that the parties aren't necessarily giving up a lot. We're just coming to a different place. And then of course, any of those issues that can be set aside, set them aside for now, because we want to start out with the collaborative issues that we can identify together. Okay, what do you want? This is really important. State it positively, make it ideal, make it realistic. Again, when we have that unrealistic position, everybody kind of chuckles. And your wants versus your needs. This is what I want, but this is what I have to have, right? This is my ceiling and this is my floor. And then what do they want? This is really important, believe it or not. It's almost more important than what you want. So you find this out during your research, your prep. You also find this out when you're talking to them and they state their position. And as you're moving back and forth, you're asking lots of questions. If they say, we can't do that, ask them why. Ask them why. Why is such a powerful question? I can't stress it enough. Why can't you do that? I'm not challenging you. I just need to know so that maybe I have a solution that we just haven't talked about. So what do they need? What do they want? What's important to them? What's not important to them? And let's go ahead and move from this one for the interest of time. Okay, and what we won't set up, let's not set up the poll question on this one. Let's just, we'll walk through these now. So there are 3 ways to see your options when you are negotiating, obviously. The key to making a mutual approach work is to focus on interests, not positions. And then creating a mutual gain solution requires some activities that are not associated with negotiations. So where I'm researching, talking with the person, creating a rapport, laughing with them, bringing donuts, all of those things help create a mutual gain, okay? And now we're gonna talk about closing. This is a final phase. It's reaching consensus, building an agreement. By putting in the effort here, you can make sure that those terms are agreed to by all of the parties, and also you still have a friend afterward. And I use the term friend in a very kind of open way. The truth is you want to be able to work with these people again. You want to be able to work with them again. That's the goal. Don't burn that bridge, okay? So let's talk about reaching consensus in the next slide. When you're reaching consensus and you're determining whether or not you can do something, can I live with it? Can I live with the decision? We want to make sure that we also understand the definitions correctly. This is a huge part of what I do, obviously, as a contracts attorney, but I promise you definitions matter in real life. Do we understand the terms? Do we understand what we're saying? Is it different to different people? Know that you cannot please everyone. And in fact, a good negotiation usually works out where both parties are just, nah, they're okay with it. Yeah, we're both kind of okay with the outcome. No one is over there like, yeah, I beat him up. I did it. And then 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So that's what I always try to consider. However, that does not mean that you meet in the middle. And I don't think we're gonna have time to talk about not meeting in the middle, but just coming up with an arbitrary meet in the middle tells you that there is absolutely no relevancy or context for that number. So I recommend coming up with a number that actually is related to what your needs and wants and interests are, okay? When you're building an agreement, what I want you to do is to take these generalities. So we agree to cover the shipping and we agree to this price, and I want you to turn them into specifics. We agree to the shipping up to this cost, up to this location, up to this many man hours. When the bargaining is over, that's when we start building the agreement. We have to be done with the negotiations. Now, there may be some specifics that we have to still work out, but generally the negotiation is done. We want to make sure we have an interpretation of the consensus. Hey, this is what we agreed to. This is what you guys said. This is what we said. And then, of course, the small print in place. This is one of those times when I do recommend, if you can, getting a lawyer involved. That's exactly what we do. We take generalities and we turn them into specifics. But it is important to, if you're, one of my recommendations is if you're going to a big deal, a big negotiation, maybe call your lawyer first, ask her for 30 minutes of her time to just talk through some of these small print issues so that you can make sure you're asking the right questions in your negotiations. When you set the terms of the agreement, make sure it's in writing. Of course, I'm going to say that until the sun comes up. Make sure it's backed up with the how factor. The how factor is how are we going to accomplish these things? How are we going to get the widgets to you? We're going to ship them. We're going to ship them via freight. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And make sure the details are very firm. You want the details as specific as you can possibly get them. The final phase of a negotiation is a time for reaching consensus. Closing a negotiation can mean two different things for two different people. So we're gonna make sure that everybody understands the definitions properly. And then question 3 says, when applied to negotiations, consensus usually involves substantive agreement on key issues. So we want to have the substantive agreement, and then we start working out the fine details afterwards. Okay, so we're going to kind of breeze through the remainder of this. So when you're dealing with difficult issues, most people actually are willing to negotiate in good faith. You guys will have more faith in humanity when I tell you that the truth is even in my contract disputes, people are really trying to do their very, very best. And we can always do better, but they're trying to do their very best. So I do not recommend resorting to tricks or intimidation. It doesn't work. There are certain techniques that you can perfect, but don't get tricky or slippery. And then you might actually find some of those people when you're in those positions. So let's how you do with difficult people and you're dealing with difficult issues. So what we want to be prepared for is a person who sits behind the desk in a position of authority, refuses to get to a place of camaraderie. They request for some kind of improvement, like I need somebody who's in a better position than you're in. And then of course, what you can do is be polite, but firm. So if you need to ask for somebody who's going to be in a different position, then ask for that, but always be polite. And like I said, there has never been a time in my career where I've had to be impolite, even with impolite people calling me You want to set a positive tone. You want to say, hey, let's get back to the issues. Let's get back to the issues here. Take the high road. You don't have to go low when they go low. And you can even suspend the negotiations. This is really important. If someone is treating you poorly, you have every right to say, you know what, I'm sorry, this isn't going very well and you're not treating me with respect. I'm going to need to either take a moment and call you back, or this is done while I'm walking away. You also want to control your emotions. You want to use your emotional intelligence. You want to make sure that you're not letting the discussions get less focused. If you need to suggest a break, clear the atmosphere out, whatever that looks like for you. If you need to change venue, burn sage, there's all kinds of stuff you can do to clear the atmosphere. And you also need to decide when it's time to walk away. If you feel threatened or extremely uncomfortable, or they use unfair tactics or make it impossible, walk away. There is never a position where you should feel threatened or unsafe. Never. That's not fair negotiating. And why don't we actually skip through the module questions just so that we can make sure, like I said, and this is the last module. I just want you to know that negotiating doesn't just take place in a boardroom. It's actually happening every day. It's happening with our vendors, it's happening with our contractors, it's happening with our kids, it's happening with our spouses. We are always negotiating. So what I'd love you to do when you're thinking of smaller negotiations, we'll go to the next slide. We want to separate the people from the problem. So don't look at the people, again, look at the issues, focus on their interests, not what their positions are, what's important to them, what are their wants and their needs. Expand the range of options, make sure you're opening up that pie, and state the terms of the agreement in specific, clear ways so that everybody knows what they're getting into. Now, on the next slide, we're going to run through just some quick tips on negotiating on the phone. Pay attention to the points. Listen actively, request more time if you need it, and don't feel rushed. That's really important on a phone call, okay? If you're negotiating via email, make sure that the topic is clearly defined. If it doesn't require, you can do this when it doesn't require extensive discussion, obviously. If the response is really simple, hey, can you accept these new shipping terms? Yes, good, thanks, we're good. And when there's little possibility for misunderstanding, as you can see, for all of these things to be in place, it requires quite a bit. So negotiating via email is probably not much of an run through. And you know what? We're actually going to go ahead and skip over negotiating on behalf of someone else, because I don't know if that's going to come up as off group. It will allow you 11, which I think is the final module on here, so that you can kind of feel more comfortable with some of those positions if you ever have to negotiate on someone else's behalf. If you get to the reading recommendations, somebody had asked to put it into the chat. I can always type those into the chat. These are the reading recommendations that I highly recommend. Getting to Yes. In business as in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. The book Conscious Capitalism is a really great way to talk about a collaborative approach to running your business. And then blog, which is on my web, workcontractshop.com. It has a very catchy title, Shut Up. But I only did that just so that people would read it. So I'd like to open it up to any questions. I know that we're like right at 11 o'clock. I'm sorry I went right on up to the level, but I just figured I'd open it up if anybody has any questions that they want to ask. Again, make sure you don't put any confidential information in there, but I'm here.
Megan, this is Brenda. What's the best way to contact you? Do you want us to just call you, or is there an email or a link that we can schedule that consultation with?
Contact me is to call the 602-753-1264 and ask my receptionist to place you on my calendar for your initial consult. Those are free. You get 30 minutes. And then what we'll do is we'll talk through your issue. And remember, for everybody on the call, I'm offering my free, not free, but my 5-page, to you it's free, my 5-page contract review for free, because you all are chamber members.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. If there's anyone who'd like to stick around for just a couple more minutes for questions, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll share the recording. If you happen to miss any second of today's presentation, or if you want to review the slides, we'll be sharing that as well. Really great information, Megan. Thank you so much. We'll wait just a couple moments here to see if there's any other additional questions.
Yeah, thank you all for listening.
And also, I know you mentioned that you have some homework.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, Elizabeth, I almost forgot. Okay, when it comes to practicing negotiations, in order to get really, really good, you have to practice all the time. So my homework for all of you is to go out and negotiate a fixed price item. I did this at JCPenney's. I was negotiating a fixed price on a pair of pants, and I actually ended up getting it. So if you could, and if you want, you can always email me to the Megan@yourcontractshop.com. That's Megan@yourcontractshop.com. MEGAN. Let me know how it went. I have some really funny stories about me negotiating fixed price items, but that would be my homework. Practice, practice, practice.
Awesome. Great.
Yes.
Tips. We have a
and just reach out to you. Go ahead and sorry, there was a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes, you just reach out for the contract review. Call that 602-753-1264. Have my receptionist put an appointment on my calendar.
Wonderful. So I think that was pretty much it. I don't see any other additional questions. Thank you again, Megan. This was really great. I learned a lot as well.
Great.
And I'll make sure to practice what I learned now that we're starting a holiday shop. So really good
Yeah.
information as well. So thank you all again. We'll be sharing information on our last and final class in January in the next coming days. So appreciate it. Thank you all for your participation today and wish you all happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. Happy holidays.